Killer7 is one of those games that I've heard about a lot, but never got the chance to play it. I've heard a lot of adjectives used to describe it: political, avant-garde, one of a kind, and so on and so forth. And while all of these are true, as I found out recently, I was also 12 when it came out, and by the time I grew up enough to be interested in terms like these, I did not have a working PlayStation 2. So it sat on my list of games to emulate one day for years and years, and then it got a PC release in 2018. And with me having played the Silver Case this year, it was only appropriate that I should finally get around to it. On a very basic level, Killer7 is a rail shooter. You've heard that right, kids, no freedom of movement for you. You have exactly two paths, forward and back, with crossroads giving you the choice to change the direction of what forward means. The maps are much more open than that though. The zombie-like heaven smiles can get to you from any direction and you can aim anywhere. It's just that your movement from A to B is limited. The enemies come in different flavors and have to be approached in one of two ways. Either shoot their weak spot, which I'm sure was much harder without mouse aiming, or use a specific attack on them. They're more puzzles than regular enemies really, and your assortment of charged shots and different guns is more like a set of keys than a way to express yourself through gameplay. Speaking of, the player characters are the titular Killer7, a group of assassins employed by the US government. There are actually 8 of them, but their boss Harman doesn't count. Think of it like Charlie's Angels. Charlie is not part of the group, he just sometimes steps in to dismember someone with an anti-material rifle. And one of the angels is a luchador, and there is only ever one angel on screen. They explode into blood and reassemble to switch the character. Might be that there's only one angel and she's a schizophrenic with 7 different personalities, but it's not spelled out clearly during the show's runtime. And that might be Charlie. Confused? Good! You can freely switch between 6 of the characters during the game, each having a different gun and abilities that can be used. Dan has a chargeable revolver, Kaede has a handgun with a scope and can slit her wrists to dispel illusions, Kevin throws knives and can turn invisible, Coyote shoots a revolver sideways and can jump real high or open padlocks, Con is a child on speed that akimbos 2 handguns, also sideways, and Mask is a luchador with 2 grenade launchers that can suplex or explode any obstacle in your way. As you kill enemies, the more they bleed, the more mana and experience you get, and you can level the 6 characters separately for stuff like attack power, reload speed and such. The odd one out is the 7th killer, Garcian, who serves as a medic. He cannot level up and carries a small silenced handgun that can't do much damage. If any other character dies in the fight, Garcian can backtrack and bring them back in a paper bag to let you revive them through the power of button mashing. If Garcian dies, it's game over. I have to admit I love the visual art style of the game. Simple, yet colorful and instantly distinctive. A fantastic use of CG rendering of models that is both stylized and naturalistic, to the point where it getting even more stylized becomes creepy. And of course there are parts where the game goes for a mixed media approach and drops anime cutscenes on you out of the blue. And, of course, it's a Suda51 game, which means the music slaps. Honestly, I want to play all of these dudes' games just because I adore the soundtracks. And of course, the best track in the game accompanies walking down or up a staircase in a completely featureless corridor, several times in the game. I have seen both friends and strangers mention how, in an era prior to YouTube, they just stayed at the location for minutes to listen to the full song. Because if you just run through it, the 4 minutes long track gets cut after 10 seconds. I want to put Suda on a pedestal and then suplex him off of it for this. Aside from combat, there are also some traditional puzzles. Nothing crazy, simply stuff like find a code and enter it, use a specific item at a specific spot, or use a character's skill when prompted. The choice of difficulty dictates not only the damage dealt and received in combat, but also how many tips you get for the puzzles. But honestly, playing on normal felt a bit insulting at times. Yes, Ghost of Gimsuit Past, I get that Coyote would be best to open this door. I've only been doing this the entire game. Lay off. Speaking of ghosts in bondage gear, if there was not enough of a party with those 7/8 killers going on, you'll also talk to quite a few ghosts stuck in the player character's head as well. As a very nice touch, leaving characters speak in plain English while the lines by phantoms are garbled and sound kinda like what you can see in the subs, but not really. They provide you with game tips, lore background, funny t-shirts, and of course, as you play a bunch of killers, the party grows as you go forward through the story. Which is, as one might expect from a Suda51 game, peculiar. On its surface, it is as it presents itself. You go forward and kill. Each chapter of the game starts with you aiming a laser sight at a silhouette of your next target, proclaiming the willingness to kill, even if you have no idea who they are. As you go towards your goal, a conspiracy of political interplay, terrorism and blurred lines between ally and enemy unveils. That marks the end of the spoiler-free part of the video. If you want to dodge spoilers and get to the conclusion, here's the timestamp. So only stay here if you already know what the game is about, or if you feel like joining me for a game of Russian roulette. If you win, I let you in on a little secret: how to find good video games with 100% success. Now that we said what Killer7 is about, let's get to what Killer7 is about. The game is definitely political. The enemies are all suicidal bombing zombie-ish terrorists that act on what seems like the will to do nothing but destroy. Fittingly, for a game released a few years after the news of 9/11 dominated the entire mediascape. And the core conflict that drives the events of the game is all about how America and Japan, despite being allies, are essentially trying to erase each other's culture out. America tries to forcibly make Japan more Western and subservient, while Japan works at undermining the core principles of what could be considered American society. And then there's colorful on-the-nose metaphors, like a dude whose last name is Pearl Harbor getting murked by a Super Sentai character. Plus, you know, Japan is probably still a bit mad that they got 2 war crimes dropped on them and should still act like everything is fine and dandy, with a third one dropping as the event of the first chapter, Sunset. Get it? Land of the Rising Sun, which is now setting? The events of that chapter even happen because of a frankly stupid act, a game of mahjong between diplomats going wrong. By the way, a bit of mahjong trivia to explain this scene. There are 2 ways to win a hand of Richie mahjong. Sumo, when you draw the final tile you need for the set yourself, and Ron, when you take a tile discarded by an opponent. However, it is impossible to set up a trap. If a tile you would need to win is in your own discard pile, you are in Furiten, which means you cannot win by Ron, only by Tsumo. Which means that in this scene, one of the American diplomats was so hellbent on grinding one of the Japanese diplomats into dust that he missed an opportunity to win the hand much earlier by discarding the tile he needed himself. The desire to show how he knows how the other one thinks left him caught with his pants down, declaring an illegal win. Which, I'm pretty sure you can draw parallels between that scene and countless political incidents you know of, regardless of where you live. Then there's the fact that the conflict between the 2 countries is driven by people who are not even parts of it. Most obviously, Kunlan on the east side of the ring has a Chinese name rather than a Japanese one, but the post-credits scene even reveals him and Harlan Smith are still going at it a century later, so that implies they have been at it beforehand as well, like some never-dying symbols of eternal conflict that dooms everyone around them. The war doesn't change, it just spins. Hell, the call sign of the Smith's handler is calling Garcian's house and pretending to be a Republican politician asking for a vote. The plot of the game spans over a year, but someone in America asking you to vote for their party is always inconspicuous. The politics are so ever-present in our daily lives that the real politics, the thing that changes the course of history, can be safely hidden underneath them. Which brings me to the first point Killer7 made me think about. What the hell even are politics? And why do people hate them being a part of the conversation so much? If it is things relating to power, power that can make or break our daily livelihoods, shouldn't everyone have a vested interest in keeping their ear as close to the ground as possible? Mayhaps it's because discussing politics makes us think about how little sway over them we have, how little power over those forces we can actually exert. In Killer7 it's taken to the furthest extreme. The democratic ideal is a sham, the leader of the nation is actually chosen by the Minister of Education, making him the most powerful person in the world. Not to mention the events that alter the world are carried out by immortal beings that care little for the lives they destroy when playing their little games. And the political machinations themselves are presented as shallow. People die and kill for power, but they ultimately gain very little from it. A feud between two political parties can endanger the US, and at the same time, a stupid slip of paper can spell disaster for Japan. The symbols of power are present, but they all ring hollow.
What is United States? What is the purpose of the president?
I'm Japanese. How the hell should I know? Figure it out yourself. There are more important things. Shit. Like finding out who you are.
Man, I'm not even American or Japanese, and that exchange still hits. But is it to say that the politics are meaningless and engaging with them is stupid? I don't know. I don't think anyone creates a game like Killer7 to say something doesn't have meaning. Shit, do you know how much time it takes to make a bad YouTube video like mine? Do you think I would make it if I didn't care about whatever I was talking about? I could spend that time playing other games or beating my meat. Now consider how much more time and effort it actually takes to make a game that is doomed to sell like shit. And a companion book to it that very precisely contradicts the game and itself. So no, I don't think Killer7 is telling us that we should just lie down and wait for the rockets to come. Which brings me to a second point that Killer7 made me think about: symbolism. Common pop cultural symbolism, to be exact, as the game is steeped in it. As an example, the boss fight with Curtis Blackburn is framed as something that starts when a pigeon flies off his arm, like a dove symbolizing the beginning of a shootout in a heroic bloodshed movie. This has some immense power over both the player character Dan and Curtis, as they are spellbound to only draw once that symbolic beginning shows itself, or if the other one makes a mistake, and then it gets repeated 4 times, robbing it of any emotional power, while it still keeps the characters in the scene bound to its whims. Or, speaking of pigeons, how about the mysterious informant who is collecting information on the Smiths for an even more mysterious figure of Emir? And he does that for $100, and he still gets fucked over on that laughable sum of money, and he still collects that information because he has to, because that is his role in this story. Or how Samantha, your save point girl, only serves that role when wearing a maid uniform, not giving a shit about working for you otherwise. And then she dies, an event that would be a huge blow in any other game, but here she just gets replaced by a dude dressed like a butler and nobody gives a shit because she was a genuinely horrible person. What mattered was the role, not the person herself. Actually, when she dies, the game is much easier because you can save in every Harman's room, not just a few select ones. Then there's the Smiths themselves. At the end, it turns out they were indeed more like split personalities than actual people, and that Garcian was the host, carrying all the weapons around in his briefcase, having killed the other 6 before. But we also know they died before. Dan, for example, has explicitly been stated to have been framed and killed by his old mentor, Curtis. And Curtis recognizes him, which means that Dan was more than just Garcian with his gun, since, you know, these two have different hairstyles and stuff. So the Killer7 are very real, material manifestations of souls of the dead. In other words, they are a past that cannot be killed. The entire game is about an unkillable past. The strains between America and Japan are extensions of faults that reach decades, if not centuries into the past, that get exploited by both countries. The spirits of people killed by the Killer7 lingered in their collective psyche. The conflict between Harman and Kunlan stretches for a century more. Hand in Killer7, the companion book, also mentions that Kun has the same power to manifest personalities physically as Harman, which I suppose was kind of presented in the 0th chapter of the game Angel, which makes me think that presenting this kind of conflict between two unkillable pasts, identical to each other if not for culture, was part of the core idea of the game. You might think that there is a scene of triumph over the past as Harman and Kun are Sonny Corleone over a chessboard, but nah. If you play the optional Killer 8 mode after beating the game, you get an additional personality wielding a Tommy gun, young Harman. This scene of a young man killing an old man is, in fact, the past killing the present. And at the very end, Garcian embraces his past as Emir and returns to being a supernatural assassin for the government, being metaphorically killed by his own past. He kills the final Heaven Smile, which of course was in his stupid trailer house all along, but that is about as hollow as smiles in general were as antagonists. It got rid of a tool, but not the hand wielding it. The symbols, be it political, pop cultural or just gameplay ones, are overpowering. They feel wrong, they seem out of place, they sound like they should not have any power over you. But they cannot be uprooted, they entangle you and limit your freedom to the point where you can only move towards where they point you. And all those symbols are, of course, rooted in the past. That's what gives them power. The world won't change, all it does is turn, no matter how big or small it gets. Taken by itself, Killer7 feels incredibly pessimistic about its theme. Taken as a part of a larger, thematic series spanning decades, which admittedly I've only had one previous insight into, it feels like an episode of disillusionment. Not to be confused with indifference though. That disillusionment is strong, hateful, and it has sharp teeth. And by the way, video games are all the same. Oh, welcome back people who judge spoilers. So, as for closing statements, given the legendary reputation of the game, I have to say I expected it to be more dense in content. It has a roughly similar length to the Silver Case, but the Silver Case was 12 hours of text, whereas Killer7 is 12 hours of gameplay and some cutscenes. That said, I feel like it's more like a medium switch than a negative, going from literature to a movie. The approach to presenting themes is different, but still potent. None of the scenes presented in Killer7 would work in the Silver Case due to how strongly they rely on visual language, and they are some unique, memorable scenes. Do I recommend this game? I don't know. Depends on what you're looking for in a game. It depends if you're up for a challenge. Not difficulty-wise, but a challenge of a much more direct kind. Fuck you, I will make all the things you took for granted feel wrong and uncomfortable. It's definitely unique, and the only reason why I do not feel comfortable calling it avant-garde is because it's been 16 years since it came out and influenced a bunch of people. It's not very avant anymore. But it's definitely something that you should play if you want to have a more complete picture of video games as an art form and its history as such. For many, it's been the first introduction to Suda51's style of directing a game, and it is truly one of a kind, as I feel there is a sort of mutual understanding between him and his fans that trying to emulate them would miss the entire point of this sort of madman creativity entirely. Killer7 doesn't have outros as iconic as TSC, so here's my boring voice instead. First of all, hi. If you just found my channel, it's all about me getting wordy about dumb obscure media because nobody reads essays anymore. Check the rest of it out if that's your marmalade. Huge thanks to my Patreon supporters, now visible on the screen. I'll be honest, now that I've got a stable job, this is just an ego thing, but it drives me nonetheless. Each bit of support is appreciated when you're quick to doubt yourself like me. Next video, probably getting a bit more in-depth about a game I already reviewed, or music. The two might be related, I don't know it. I need to spend some more time at my corporate job before I can talk about it. See you there. Oh my god, it breached container again. Be right back. Hey! Hey! Back to the room!